Hi, I'm Cristine Rayner. This is my channel. Shh, the kids are asleep. Welcome to Momming at Midnight. The topic of today is PlayStations. Now that doesn't mean the electronic kind. That means having stations in your home where your kids can go and independently work so that you can work with your other kids one-on-one. Let's say you're a parent that has 3 kids. What are you going to do when you're working with one child and the other 2 are asking you questions or needing something from you? Even having one child, you might need some time and space to yourself to do the dishes or to answer text messages or whatever the case may be, and you don't really want to ignore your child while that's happening. I hear parents asking, well, how am I going to homeschool multiple kids at the same time? I have a little one that's always interrupting, and the middle one needs my help. The older one needs some direction too and one-on-one time. So how do you create an atmosphere, an environment that's going to work for homeschooling your kids? You have to structure your environment wisely. You can pick out appropriate tools and play sets, whether it's messy play or worksheets or puzzles. You can collect all those things the night before into your morning baskets and then set them out as playstations in different areas of your house for your different kids. You might have to collect and then redo them multiple times in the day. Have enough equipment and play sets and materials and learning supplies where you can rotate through different things and it doesn't become boring, and you can utilize this strategy multiple times a day. You can set up an area for the younger kids. They can work through 1 or 2 or 3 tasks if they're younger kids. They're likely to enjoy these tasks and want to play with them independently, but you have to set them up for them and set up the expectation that they will work through those tasks. One way that's super helpful is to utilize closed-ended tasks. For instance, something where it's a job that's finished when the child is done. A worksheet is finished when it's done. A puzzle is finished when it's done. Messy play is an open-ended task. Legos is an open-ended task. Unless you give specific instructions to make a certain object, and when they've completed, they can come to you and show it off. The best way to set this up is to have some closed-ended tasks so that your child knows to move on to the next task, and then finish with the task that's more open-ended so there's a little bit of imaginative play. It might be more of a creative task that keeps their interest longer, and then they stay with that station longer. So you have more time to give quality attention to the child you're working with individually. When you have very young children or children with special needs, it's best to do one task at a time together with you behind the child, kind of coaching them with your hands on what to do and how to finish the puzzle, let's say. If it's something they can do semi-independently, like coloring or messy play that won't get all over the place, such as magic sand in a container, then those are the right tools you're choosing. If it's something your child is going to need help with and they have to ask questions, then that's not going to be independent play or learning that's going to help you to get that one-on-one time with the other child. So first you have to teach your kids how to use the material independently, and then you teach them how to move through the station one task at a time. It's easier when you use the closed-ended tasks or the tasks that automatically end when you've completed it, and stack those first and then use the open-ended task at the very end so that it's something they're looking forward to, but it's also something that is more pretend play or creative, and that will keep them playing with that object longer. So this is an example of playstations for an older child. It could be set up on the floor, on a desk, on a table. You can set them up with materials that you want them to learn that they can do more independently, and that way you have some more quality time with one of the other kids. So you would set up all of your materials in a manner such as this, and you would bring them over and tell them, first complete the puzzle, then do the worksheet, and then go on to the Legos. When you're finished with the Legos, come back and see me. So you might have another set of materials set up in a different location, or you might have something like a jump rope and a ball and some chalk sitting outside in the backyard, and you direct them to go out there next. If you have an older kid, you can stretch this to 5 different tasks before they need to take a break or move out of this area. You can do this same thing with younger kids with the materials that are more suited for their grade or their developmental age. You can see here that I have set up a task that's closed-ended with the puzzle, because once you've completed it, it's done. So they automatically know to move on to the next item. With the worksheet, that's also closed-ended, because when they're finished with this, they know they're done, unless they want to keep working, which is great, and then you can have them continue. But at some point, they'll tire of this and want to move on. You notice that I put the Legos last, assuming this child is going to be more reinforced by the Legos and they're more interested in moving to this last item, so that they actually do work through those tasks to get to it. If you find that your child is trying to do them out of order, come back over and redirect them to go to the task that they're supposed to be at. Some kids will require you to close, for instance, the Lego box until it's time for them to open it. Sometimes this could be too distracting for kids that maybe have ADHD or they really, really love Legos. Sometimes it's a good idea to put a little card there that says reward, and they can take that card to you at that point, and you can hand them the Legos. If you're going to put worksheets or things that are obviously more academic into the mix, that's perfectly fine, but try to sandwich them between 2 other more exciting tasks. You have to teach your kids how to move through these stations. So you want to tell them, first do this station, then do this one, then do that one. You can have up to 5 or 6 items per station depending on the level of your child's entertainment with those objects and their ability to be independent and self-direct. If they're very good at following through on independent tasks like this, you can set up to 5 or 6 stations. Make sure that the last one is reinforcing and it's fun to do, so they feel like they had a payoff at the end. When they've completed those tasks, they can come to you and let you know that they're done. They can either just come up to you and let you know, hey mom, I'm finished with those. Or you can use a system where you can use a 3x5 card and write reward on it or have stickers all over it. They can bring that quietly to you and pass it to you, and know that they have to wait until you're ready to give them that reward. But it's best to give them that reward as close in time as possible so they know that the work that they did is getting a payoff. So the reward might be something like Legos at the end that's also something they can do on their own independently. But you know that if you put it in the list of tasks that you laid out in the station, they might get too excited about the Legos and try to skip the other pieces. Or maybe they're just way too into Lego, so it's distracting them from the process of whatever it is they're sitting with. You want to make sure that you give some space in between so they're not focused on the next task when they're supposed to be focusing on the task that they're looking at. Having it set up in a row or a line is helpful because then it's automatic that the kids understand they have to go that direction. I always go from left to right, just like a reading strategy, left to right, especially for those early learners, because then they already have set up in their head that things are supposed to go left to right. If you have older kids, you can teach them how to do the same types of strategies. You can even set up all these tasks in a manner that you think is appropriate, considering in your mind what's going to be the payoff at the end, which ones are closed and open-ended tasks, and how many of them are more toys and play, and how many of them are more educational sorts of toys. You can set those up in advance and take pictures and have a quick guide for somebody else who might be watching your kids, or for your older kids to help you manage some of the younger kids when you're busy doing other things. For instance, if you have multiple children, you might have 1 or 2 kids that could help set up these playstations, and they might not mind that at all. And you might actually give them more praise or rewards for helping out in that manner. So having a pre-designed list of things that you're going to be using for the younger kids, or taking pictures of what they can do to set it up, would be really nice. You can also tag in some of the older kids to be the helper when those stations are being run. So not only is that child getting support if you can't give it right that moment and it's necessary, the older child can mentor the younger one and help out. These play stations are learning stations. Play is learning. You have to be able to think about it that way. It doesn't all have to be academic. It doesn't all have to be just play. A mixture of all those things would be ideal. Not if it's something you have to sit and attend to and teach your child. It should be something that's fairly mastered already. Like a puzzle is fairly easy to do if your child has already done that puzzle once or twice. Or sometimes you have to do part of the project first to help them out. For instance, if it's a puzzle that your child struggles with a little bit, you can make the outside border of that puzzle, but leave the rest of it for them to fill in. You can use these playstations on the top of a bed, on the floor, in different parts of the house on the ground. You can leave some out on the table or 2 different places on the table. You can leave name cards or color coding if you want to, if you have multiple kids. Some kids will find that really fun. It's almost like a scavenger hunt to walk around and look for the same color as the dot on their shirt. Let's say it's a bright green dot and you put a bright green dot next to the PlayStation you want that child to go to. And then a ball and a jump rope and some chalk out in the backyard with the same green sticker. Maybe it's on a 3x5 card. So when they're done with the first PlayStation and set of tasks, they can look again, oh, I have the bright green dot. Let me go look for the card that has the bright green dot on these other PlayStations. If you've already shown your kids how to play handball, for instance, or what areas they're allowed to draw chalk in, how to use a jump rope, then they automatically have an idea of what they're expected to do there. You can also start out with walking your kids through the PlayStations and explaining the expectations. Having really clear boundaries with your kids about when you're working one-on-one with one person is going to be really vital to this working. And you have to coach them and reward them and give them verbal praise as well as maybe treats to get it started so they understand the expectations and they're motivated to follow the rules with as little interaction from you as possible. When you teach them first how to do the PlayStations and you're afar watching, making sure that they're completing it, if you need to go and prompt them on what to do next or that maybe they didn't remember a step, you can just walk up, give them as little attention as possible, just redirect them physically on what they're supposed to do next. You can tap on the book, you can move the puzzle pieces. Let's say the dog walked through and broke something, they got upset, you can go and say, hey, it's okay, and then move them along to the next task. Having control of your environment and supplies is really important. It's going to help reduce the chaos and increase your ability to control the environment. You might be able to get 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half an hour out of these tasks, maybe even an hour. It depends on how old your child is and how independent they can be and what kind of materials you're able to give them. If they're materials that take a long time but they're enjoyable, then that would be appropriate. I wouldn't suggest doing independent work all day long without having breaks or socialization. That's not the goal of this. The goal of this is to do it maybe a few times a day maximum. And you have to check and see which kids it's working for and which kids this doesn't work for so well. Figure out what's the problem. Is it attention span? Is it the materials are too boring and they've seen them so many times before? Is it not stimulating enough? You have to maybe find some new resources or new ideas and be creative with what you can teach your kids in this sort of independent manner. Another really great thing that you can do is put away as many toys and materials as you can so that you can clear the fields of all the things that are stimulating or all the things that might distract them and put out the things that you want them to focus on. Whether you do this in a big pile in the middle of your living room or whether you do this in a PlayStation format is up to you. You can switch it up and do it different ways. But the idea is to get something like clear bins that you can put different play sets or different material sets into and put them up high somewhere or in a shelving unit into a closet that they're not allowed to access. And then you're the one divvying out these materials and fun play sets and things to do. If they have lots of toys and things to do all over the house, they get bored of it. It's not novel and new anymore. It's kind of like if you celebrate Christmas, it's like having all your toys in a big pile for Christmas, but being overwhelmed and not really sure what you want to play with. You might just stick with one toy or play with the packaging. Your kids get too satiated on all of this stuff. It becomes an overwhelming environment, or it becomes a boring environment because they've seen it all, they've done it all, they've touched it all. So if you put away these things and you pull them out every couple of weeks or once a month, or depending on what the toys are, if you can rotate through your materials in that manner, they don't get bored of them. It's always something new and novel and fresh and interesting that they can get their hands in, and then you can put them away again for use later. So you would never want to have a completely sterile, clean environment with no materials. The idea is the more stimulating environment you can create, the better. However, you don't want it to be something that they acclimate to and get used to, and then they become bored and they don't want to play with those things or learn from those tools anymore. Something to note here is that can be really inexpensive and really creative and simple things, such as a 6 or 7-year-old playing with Orbeez that have been put inside a bin of water. They have to try to get all the Orbeez out with the tweezers and put it in a different dish. So that's fine motor stuff that they can be working on. It's not intellectual learning, but it is fine motor development. So think out of the box with these things. Something like tying a shoe, that could be one of the station options. Sticker books are a great thing to use for this. You can find all sorts of sticker books that are maybe social studies or science related. You could write down a picture in dry erase form of how you want the materials to end up looking. For instance, drawing a picture of a square and a triangle and a letter L that your kids have to create out of Legos from the model. You could use magic sand and tiny erasers and have your kids dig around and find all the tiny erasers. Just make sure they're not choking hazards, of course. There are so many options. You can put so many things together for your kids to do. Make sure that you're teaching them exactly step by step how to approach these items. At the end of the day or at the end of these tasks, you could even make it part of the program for your kids to pick up each item and put it away in a bin or put it away in a drawer, or maybe it can go right back into the morning basket as a cleanup option. If you're a homeschool parent who's trying to figure out how to work and homeschool at the same time, one place to start is to take a look at what other homeschool parents are doing. What kind of private business do they have? What kind of work do they do? I've recently made a Facebook group that's for supporting homeschool parents in their businesses, whether you want to support them by shopping and buying from them, or whether you want to just look at what they do and what they're offering and get some ideas for yourself. Or if you are a small business person and you will be homeschooling, you can join the group as well. We're supporting each other to market and to collaborate. If you'd like to check out that group or to join it, the name of the group on Facebook is Support Homeschool Businesses. If you need some extra tailoring or someone to come out and help you develop your homeschool program, especially if you have kids that have special needs, I'm also available for one-on-one coaching. If you have just 1 or 2 urgent questions, you can reach out to me, or you can go join the Momming at Midnight Facebook group, or you can join me for the live Q&A session in that group that I plan to do once a month. Please subscribe and share with your friends, and I'll see you on the next video.